In this lesson, we're going to talk about the associative property of addition. And this is just another one of those properties of numbers. This one says that changing the grouping of the terms does not change the value. So, for example, we have a group of terms here. And if I group the first two terms together, using parentheses, and then work the problem, I have to do what's in the parentheses first. So 6 plus 9 is 15, and now I have 15 plus 1. Well, if I add those together, I get 16. Now take the same problem, but this time let's group the 9 and the 1 together. So notice we are leaving the terms in the same order. If we change the order, that would be the commutative property. We are leaving the terms in the same order, and we are changing only the grouping. So in the first statement, I have the first two terms grouped together. In this second statement, I have the last two terms grouped together. Now if I add the 9 and the 1, this now says 6 plus 10, which of course if I add those still equals 16. So you see that changing the grouping did not change the value of the statement, and that's all we mean by the associative property of addition, that changing the grouping does not change the value. Now we can do a similar thing for the associative property of multiplication. This says that changing the grouping of the factors does not change the value. And we know this to be true as well. Let's take an example. 2 times 5 times 3. Now if I group the 2 and the 5 together with parentheses, this equals 10 times 3, which of course is 30. But if I take the same three terms in the same order and instead group the 5 and the 3 together, then this will make 2 times 15, which of course is still 30. So we see that changing the grouping when we're multiplying does not change the value of the expression. Now, let's look at an example like you might see in your homework. We're going to use the associative property to simplify this expression. Right now the 8 and the x are grouped together, but of course the problem is that since I don't know how much x is, I can't actually go through with this addition. So if I change the grouping, the associative property says I'm allowed to change the grouping without changing the value. So instead of grouping the 8 plus x, let's try grouping the 3 and the 8. Notice the terms stay in the same order, because if we change the order of the terms, we're using the commutative property. But this is the associative property. So here, this is the part where I have changed the grouping, but I have not yet simplified the statement. Now we know that 3 plus 8 is 11, so I really don't need to write it out in this form here, the 3 plus 8. I can combine those into one number, which is 11. So now we've simplified it. And here's another similar one. Use the associative property to simplify 8 times 4x. So again, the problem is that because x is an unknown, we can't actually go through with the multiplication of 4 times x. But the associative property says I can change the grouping here, and instead of grouping 4 times x, I can group 8 times 4. And of course 8 times 4 can be written as 32. So this is really 32x. Now on this last example, we're going to use both properties together. We've already learned the commutative property. Now we're going to look at using the commutative and the associative at the same time to simplify 7 plus x plus 2. So the first thing I want to do is use the commutative property to change the order of x plus 2. We'll use the commutative property of addition, and we will change the order of the x plus 2 into 2 plus x. Now I want to combine the 7 and the 2, so I'll have to change the grouping using the associative property. Makes it 7 plus 2 grouped together plus x, and 7 plus 2 is 9. So we have 9 plus x. Now in the future, we will just automatically, when we see something like this, we'll just automatically be able to go to this step, and you don't always have to list out commutative property, associative property, you can just go straight to the end, but it's kind of like knowing the traffic laws. When you're driving somewhere, you have to know the laws of the road, or you might break them. So here we're learning the laws of these numbers so that we don't break any rules and so that we know what we're allowed to get away with. And so from now on, though, we won't actually cite the rule when we use it. We'll just go straight from here to here.